This is Meredith for Real, the Curious Introvert, and I'm Meredith. Here we explore the taboo, less obvious, and paradoxical aspects of society. Questions that need nuanced answers, not just Google results. My mission, and yours if you choose to accept it, is to make a more curious future for everyone. Each episode is different, so bring your ADD and your earbuds and have a look around. Before we start talking teeth, I want to invite you, if you like giving your opinion and getting free stuff, to request to join my private Facebook group. The feedback given there helps me shape the show. You can search MFR Curious Insiders on Facebook or click the link in the episode description. This week is a societal concept that you may not even realize that you have. It's that good teeth equals high social status and bad teeth equals untrustworthiness and low intelligence. My guest tackles the topic from a historical view, so be prepared to not only examine your own belief about teeth and status, but to have a pocket full of fun facts for your next party. I'm sure that sheds a lot of light on what I consider to be fun, so I probably just got myself uninvited by whatever party host may be hearing this. But my guest covers just how long teeth and social status have been a thing, tooth worms, the truth behind George Washington's dentures, and the influence that Hollywood has on us. And I think you'll hear the answer to why we tend to equate missing teeth with low intelligence. If you end up liking this episode, you'll also like the one I did with the same guest on why cannibalism is taboo. That's episode 143. All right, friends, keep it curious. You'd be hard-pressed to find someone who'd pass up an opportunity to have a Hollywood smile. A good smile translates to trustworthiness, leadership, intelligence, and success. A bad smile, a lack of morals, sneaky, backwoods. But why is that? And how long have humans been going out of their way to whiten, straighten, and bling out their teeth? My next guest is someone who lives at the intersection of biology, history, and behavior. He's a PhD zoologist, Emeritus Professor of Biology at Long Island University, and a research associate at the American Museum of Natural History. He's also the author of Bite, an incisive history of teeth from hagfish to humans. And today we're going to get psychosocial historical as we discuss all things teeth and social status. Author, anatomist, proud New Yorker, Dr. Bill Schutt. Thanks for being here.
Great to be back, Meredith. It's really nice to see you.
Well, like cannibalism that we covered in our last episode together, I feel like teeth kind of span the globe and time with both like the weird and the wonderful. And it's something that has strange yet acceptable practices today that keep going, like keeping baby teeth and wearing like tooth jewelry. So my first question to you is, how far back does this go? At what point in human history were people like, teeth are great for chewing and all, but I wonder what else we could do with them?
I think about as far back as we've been able to determine, it was the ancient Etruscans who lived in what is now Italy. And this was about 3,000 years ago. They were around from about 800 BCE till about 200 BCE until they got routed by the Romans. What has been uncovered are these literally pieces that fit into your mouth, gold bands that had teeth attached to them. And what historians have been able to determine is that wealthy women would have their upper incisors removed, probably without anesthesia, and then filed down and then reinserted into a gold band and then attached to the remaining teeth, the canines. And this was really the first mouth bling. These were the first grills. It was determined that they could not be used for eating. So we think that they were just for show. They were there to illustrate how wealthy these people were. It was a status symbol.
So it was mostly women, and then it even prevented how well they could chew, but they still did it?
It was all women. And so my first question was, well, were the teeth bad? And the historians that I spoke to said, no, these were the teeth that, if your teeth are going to go bad, they're going to go bad from the back forward, your molars and premolars. But these were upper incisors, and there was no indication that there was any kind of decay. They were just yanked out and modified and then reinserted back into this gold band. And it was only women. Men did not do this. But there was an equality between men and women for the Etruscans that the Romans who followed them and others like the Greeks just, they didn't have anything to do with that. The women ate in a different place. They were separate from the men. The Etruscans weren't like that.
That is so interesting. Were there cultures far back that had the men that had tooth decorating practices?
Yeah, the Mayans, for example, we think that somewhere between 300 CE and 900 CE, they would drill holes in their, once again, incisors and insert pieces of jade. And this was purely decorative as well. These teeth could be used for eating, we think, because they weren't removed.
If only the Etruscans knew there was an easier way.
Yeah.
So what are the theories about why humans living opposite of the globe of each other would be equally convinced that decorative teeth would be a status symbol?
Interesting question. Up until the mid-1900s, there was this belief that cultural similarities in cultures that were in different parts of the world, extremely distant parts of the world, that these shared cultural phenomenon spread from a single culture in either Mesopotamia or Egypt and was spread by seafarers to these different parts of the world. There was really no evidence of that. And looking at it from a modern perspective, the thought is that they very much like convergent evolution, where bats and birds and insects all have wings, but they didn't get them from a common ancestor. It's really the same thought, but this has to do with culture, that these things evolved, for lack of a better word, separately in these very different cultures.
That is so interesting. I love that you tied that into bats, because for the listeners who don't know, that is another one of your areas of expertise and authorship is bats. It kind of makes me think about, I don't know if you've experienced this with relatives of yours, but like my mom and I don't live in the same state, and we haven't for quite some time, but we'll get together and visit and we'll find that we've suddenly taken up the same hobby, or that we have purchased the same toothpaste, or suddenly decided that we like this other deodorant, even though, we never used that one when we lived in the same house together. It just makes you start to wonder, how predictable am I?
The example that I ran across when I was writing this book had to do with toothworms. And this was a phenomenon, the belief that, and they found this in cultures all over the world. And that's where this it was called the heliotropic theory of how these ideas, like those stories about toothworms, spread to different parts of the planet. And really, that was the thing that got me started on this, as far as where did that come from? Why do they have these similar concepts when they probably didn't have any connection to each other? And the idea now is that, no matter what culture you were in, you had problems with worms, whether it was your digestive system or they were eating the wood in your boats. And so this became the idea that they were these creatures that were causing tooth decay. And this was a concept that lasted right up into the 20th century in some places in the world. Now we know that tooth decay is caused by bacteria. There were very different reasons why our teeth are falling out of our faces.
But under a microscope, do bacteria look like worms?
Oh, well, they didn't have microscopes back then. They just, they saw worms and they put 2 and 2 together and came out with 5. And this was something that happened all over the world.
This is so interesting to me, not just because of the behavior part of it and how it transcended all of these land masses and centuries of time, but also because the behavior stayed and yet the connotation has shifted. Back then, as you pointed out, it was a status symbol with both the Mayans and the people who lived in ancient Italy. And now, if you go into a job interview with a mouthful of bling, that's seen as a countercultural move. It's kind of a bold move.
Unless you're in the music industry or entertainment industry.
Right.
Since the 1980s, when hip hop began to take off. And I think it started in places like the Bronx and Brooklyn and New York City, where grills became popular. And as hip hop spread, this idea of having this device in your teeth, some of them were permanent, some of them weren't, became a status symbol, a symbol of wealth, a symbol of, style. And so it spread across the country. And then from the music industry to the entertainment industry as well. I just think that There are some situations you're just not going to walk into a job interview with this type of device in your mouth. And I think that's just because, culture is king. And if the industrial culture, if the business culture dictates that that's not what you do, then you don't do it. Otherwise, you're looked down upon. Now, this could certainly change as fashion changes. But right now, I think that there are certain places where it's appropriate. It used to be piercings and tattoos. That's not such a big deal anymore. Who knows down the road if it's going to be mouth bling? That becomes more acceptable on every level.
And it would be interesting to see at what level. Is it just accepted or is it the standard? Because if you were the shit back as an ancient Mayan, you had a gold grill or you had teeth jewelry, right? But if you are the CFO of a major company in North America, it is unlikely that you have teeth jewelry. So it really speaks to how much of what we view as status is completely fabricated. It feels so real, though.
Yeah, I mean, culture is king. It's what we determine is the right thing, is the fashionable thing, is the thing that everyone should do. And the people who don't do that, they're somehow lesser, which is ridiculous. That's just another type of prejudice, I guess.
Well, it wasn't all about bling. In your book, you spent a considerable amount of time talking about people who were just trying to keep their teeth or keep the appearance of their teeth. What were the social implications of missing teeth historically?
Well, things really took a downturn in the 16th century when refined sugar became available to the masses. Until then, sugar plantations were found in places like India, and so sugar had to be imported. But in the New World, when sugar plantations started in places like Louisiana and refined sugar became much more available, really, you could see how that coincided with tooth problems, and teeth began falling out at a rate that they probably had never fallen out before. And there was no concept of bacteria or good dental hygiene. And so a lot of teeth fell out of a lot of mouths. And I talked quite a bit about George Washington and how when he was elected president, he had one of his own original teeth.
Kind of wild.
Yeah, but we don't think that it was because he consumed a lot of sugar. We think that it was medical treatments at the time, which contained mercury, which caused his teeth to loosen up and fall out. While there is documentation that he was treated with mercury compounds, there's no direct evidence where he's talking about the fact that, I used this stuff and now my teeth are falling out. It came from people like John Adams, who did make the connection between the medications they were taking and the problems that they had with loose teeth. So when you had somebody that was the leader of this newly minted country, it paid for him to have a mouthful of teeth. He looked better. If he was standing in front of hundreds of people making a speech, and his speeches were notoriously short, as were his dinner appearances, apparently, he used dentures, and only the rich could afford them. And so this was something that I found really interesting. I lucked out. When I wrote a book about cannibalism, there was this big controversy that popped up about the Donner Party and all these headlines that the Donner Party didn't cannibalize. And, I went in there and researchers were like, no, they cannibalized. So in sort of the same way, when I started to look at, you're writing a book about teeth and has tried to be a historian and you're like, well, George Washington, wooden teeth, were they made of wood?
Right.
So that's how I started. But what I ran into was the fact that, there was this major controversy that was taking place about where the teeth that were used in his dentures came from. And generally, they came from elephant tusks or hippo tusks or cows or horses or elk that were carved and inserted into these horrible metal lead contraptions with springs. And it had to be incredibly painful. But some of the teeth that were in his 4 sets of dentures that we still have from George Washington were human teeth. And so the question became, where did they come from? And people did some digging, and what they found out was that Washington held enslaved people on his plantation, and that these enslaved people commonly sold their teeth right out of their mouths, a la Les Miserables, where Fantine sells her teeth. And so there was a real big uproar that I got to investigate about whether or not there was evidence that Washington's dentists used slave teeth in the dentures that he wore over the last 20 years of his life. So most people didn't have dentures. Most people, when their teeth fell out, they were out. They dug up a graveyard in England and that they were going to put a parking lot or something there. It was an old graveyard. And they dug up like 800 bodies to move. And what they found were 2 or 3 of them had false teeth, and the rest of them didn't. So it was not something that was commonly found in people unless they were wealthy.
Yeah, so it went from having the status symbol being shiny teeth, decorated teeth, diamond teeth, to just having teeth.
Yeah. And I think it was necessary for him to have a good set of teeth if he was going to look strong in front of his soldiers and in front of people that he spoke to.
Right. I want to come back to that in a minute, but I wanted to get clarity on something you said about the teeth from enslaved people, that they sold their teeth. I had the vision for some reason that it wasn't a voluntary surrender of teeth at all times. What did you find when you were researching it? Did they ever take the teeth from enslaved people, or was it always kind of a strange side hustle?
I'd never ran across, and this is certainly not to say it didn't happen, I never came across an instance where enslaved people were forced to sell their teeth, physically forced. But they did it because they were poor and they needed to make money, and that's how they did it, as horrible as that was. But it wasn't just enslaved folks, it was poor. I guess maybe the closest thing that I could come to with regard to instances where teeth were taken forcibly, the people that they were taken from were dead, and those were teeth called Waterloo teeth. And that was named for the Battle of Waterloo, where teeth were extracted from people who died in that battle, from soldiers who died. And they were used in tooth transplants, they were used in dentures.
This is so funny. I can't help but, as we're going through this topic, think about all the times that I have felt self-conscious about my teeth, or a family member has felt self-conscious about their teeth. And we have both said, oh gosh, isn't that so silly? It's so vain. Like, we feel bad even admitting this sort of awareness of teeth and noticing other people's teeth. But clearly, this is not a new thing. I mean, when I was reading your book, I was so amazed, and I am at this moment also, of the obsession that humans have with their own teeth.
I think this probably stemmed mostly from something else that I talk about, and that's the Great American Smile. That started out probably in Hollywood in the 1920s. Up until then, until the talkies came around, when you were making a film, you didn't have to have a close-up of this person speaking. They shot different angles so that if a person had a mouthful of bad teeth, they could hide it pretty well. But once the talkies came around, then some of the actors and actresses that were out there had really bad teeth, and that was just the way it was at the time. In the 1920s, there was a dentist by the name of Charles Pincus, and he became the dentist to the stars. And I think he was really responsible for the Great American Smile. He worked on people like Shirley Temple, and later on people like Montgomery Clift. And there's a long list, Betty Davis, there's this long list of actors and actresses who had dental work done. I think the one that is the most famous is the fact that Judy Garland had a space between her teeth, and that didn't really play well. So they made something that filled that tooth in. And now she had this beautiful smile. From there, I really think that people who went to the movies, and they went very often, looked at that and wanted to be that way, so that they became much more conscious about the fact that they wanted their teeth to look good. But still, in all, teeth were falling out at a remarkable rate. And a lot of people didn't have the money to get their teeth repaired on a regular basis. And so they would have them all yanked out and put dentures in if they could afford them.
Hey, Curiositors, just a quick pause to show gratitude to our sponsors and give you some special deals. If you like this show, which I'm assuming you do because we're here, I can tell you with confidence that you'll also love The Jordan Harbinger Show. He weaves thoughtful questions in as his guests share seriously incredible stories. I just listened to episode 1018, where guest Phil Elmwood talks about his career as a PR operative for a laundry list of shady government figures. I also really love episode 784 with Rami Romani, who shares incredible stories of ancient and modern day Egypt, including this crazy escape story with him and his wife, and the truth about ancient Egyptian curses. If you're interested in hearing from everyone from athletes to hostage negotiators, you'll want to subscribe. You can't go wrong with adding the Jordan Harbinger Show to your rotation. It's incredibly interesting. There's never a dull show. Search for the Jordan Harbinger Show, that's HARB as in boy, IN as in Nancy, GER, on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to podcasts. This episode is also brought to you by INSEC Pest Control. I love that INSEC not only cares about happy customers, but they also care about the community. They founded the TREAD Mosquito Program. TREAD stands for Tire Removal Education, Alteration, and Disposal. This program works with other pest control entities and municipalities to remove what they call mosquito condos, discarded tires. This is yet another reason I've been a customer of theirs for so long. If you're in the Florida Panhandle or the Gulf Coast of Alabama and want quality pest control with guaranteed results, give INSEC a call, ensec.net. This episode is supported by the UWF Historic Trust. You may not realize this, but I record the show in an exhibit in the Pensacola Museum of History. It's called Trader John's. It's a permanent exhibit set up to look like a historic bar from downtown Pensacola. If you are planning a holiday get-together in the Pensacola area and want a unique space to hold it in, have it here, where there's an interesting array of local memorabilia to look at. There's 2 booths, several cocktail tables and chairs, and even the actual bar from the original location. You can learn more at historicpensacola.org. Now back to the show. Remember to stay till the end where I give you a sneak peek of next week's episode. Oh, okay. So is that, I was wondering when dentures kind of entered the chat. Is that when that happened? Was the 1920s?
Dentures became more popular in the early 1900s into the 1920s and 30s. They became more commonly available to people who were not uber rich. At the time, dentistry was very different. Dentistry was not based on preservation and restoration. A lot of it had to do with, let's get rid of the problem before it gets worse. So they would just remove all your teeth. Some people couldn't afford it. They didn't have the money to go to the dentist regularly. And when their teeth started to go bad, they'd have them pulled out and they'd have dentures put in, which probably made them feel better about their appearance. But, that changed. The dental industry, which is a multi-billion-dollar industry, of course, sort of transitioned. If you walked in and looked at the dentist room, he'd start pulling your teeth out. Went from something like that to preserving teeth. People were becoming more aware of good dental hygiene and brushing your teeth and flossing. So it wasn't this knee-jerk reaction just to have your teeth pulled out when things started to go south.
I bet that's why for generations, people's top fear was the dentist. Because in your book, you talk about how there was this long history of, I think you called it a tooth pulling culture in barber shops and roadside markets. And it was like for people who wanted to keep their teeth, it seemed like there was a lot of opportunities to get them pulled.
And there was no conception of sanitary conditions, and people would get infections and die at a remarkable rate. 100 people a week dying in London over tooth-related problems. This is something that sounds absurd now, but there was just no concept of infection or sterile conditions. And these were not trained dentists. It was more like a sideshow. You'd have clowns and musicians making noise so that the crowds couldn't hear people getting their teeth yanked out and screaming bloody murder.
Oh my God. I was wondering what the connection was. I didn't come to that conclusion. That is really interesting. I want to go back to George Washington for a minute because you said something about how it was important that he have a nice set of teeth. And I want to kind of dive into that psychosocial part of like why, or perhaps from your area of expertise for how long, we have associated not having teeth with maybe some sort of moral problem or, hillbilly, you're not intelligent. How far back does that go?
I think this is prejudice that we have. And I think that it's unfortunate. And I recognize that this is out there, that there are some people who look at the fact that, well, this person doesn't have any teeth and think, well, they must be poor or they just don't bother going to the dentist. And so they have dental problems and then they lose all their teeth. And that's not very smart, is it? That's not the way to look at this. I just think it's another horrible example of the prejudices that humans have. From a scientific perspective, I think that for me, the important thing was that a growing amount of research that points to a connection between gum disease, which is the leading cause of tooth loss, and cognitive decline. And also some preliminary studies that are showing that people who get dentures don't have as much of a problem here. And that is also to me, just about as interesting or even more interesting was the connection between periodontal disease and dementia, as in Alzheimer's disease. And what they have found is a relationship between a common gum bacterium and Alzheimer's disease. And so that is research that is new and is ongoing, but to me, very interesting. And I think tangentially it ties into your question about if you don't have teeth, why do people perceive you as not being intelligent?
My mind is blown that you are mentioning this because you didn't know this, but this is actually a topic that I've been looking into, the connection between Alzheimer's and dementia and all things in your mouth, and the connection between hyperinsulinemia and cognitive decline, especially in children. And so if you have high blood sugar levels consistently, eating a lot of sugar, and it's both affecting your gums in a negative way and your blood sugar, this could be part of the social soup of why we view people with bad teeth as of lesser intelligence.
Yeah, there's a lot of really interesting work that's being done right now. To me, that was towards the end of the book, I started to look at new dental technologies and things that will, for example, hopefully make dental fillings a thing of the past, not far down the road. So there's a lot going on. And it being a multi-billion-dollar industry, that certainly there's a lot of interest in it.
And it's interesting how the reverse is also true and ties into your point about movies and how movies set the tone in our society, certainly more recently, or maybe it's been since they came out. But I also kind of wonder if they're more of a thermometer than a thermostat, showing the prejudices that are within. Because when you look at movies, Superman, he's got a great smile. His teeth are straight, they are white. And then the Sith from Star Wars, oh my gosh, super bad teeth. The Penguin in Batman, super bad teeth. So there's also this like, oh, this person is a bad moral person. They don't make good moral decisions. They are evil.
That's a great point. And I think that, now it's movies, but back when it was before movies got this popular, it was probably other types of entertainment that depicted no teeth in that villain, and buck teeth or crooked teeth or sharpened teeth that turned you into the bad guy.
Yeah, that's true. And some people now are sharpening their teeth and modifying their teeth in that way to look like there's a lizard man out there. I'm sure you've seen him in your research.
Yeah.
No comment, huh?
Not really. I mean, people can do what they want with their bodies. It's not up to me to decide what's right or wrong. So, yeah.
Yeah. Well, as you said in your book, there's no last word with science. And certainly I would say the same is true of society. Who knows what's next? Who knows what anthropologists will dig up in 1,000 years and look back at our time now and find our teeth and go, God, these people were so strange. But before we wrap up, do you have any final words that you want to share?
This was my first big appearance talking about this book. And as a zoologist, naturally I want to sort of approach this from looking at it, how teeth evolved in the animal kingdom and how they led to vertebrates being so successful. So to look at it from this angle that you present, to me, is a bit more difficult because I'm not a psychologist. That's not my training. So this is a learning experience for me. When you're looking at this type of thing and you haven't worked on it in the past, I study bats for a living, and now I'm writing a book about teeth. So the learning curve is really steep, and it remains so.
Well, what I love about, first of all, your willingness to come on my show and kind of explore the corners of your expertise, the edge of your expertise, and kind of holding on. And
Dear life.
Well, you're doing a great job. But what I appreciated so much about it is that we are all interconnected, and our biological history and our documented history, our modern way of living right now, they all are related and connected in some way. And I see those connections as helpful to gain perspective, because you've heard the saying, don't ask the fish how the water is, right? Because they're in the water. They're like, what water? I feel that way about modern society in the moment. If you don't take a historical look at what could be informing your present day, you are losing a lot of really valuable perspective.
Very interesting. Yeah, that's a great angle to take. And I've been really lucky because I've been able to find this niche with my writing where I take complex concepts like cannibalism or the heart or blood feeding, things that you would normally have this horrible knee-jerk reaction to, and explain them from a zoological point of view. I'm able to get some neat science across, but do it in a hopefully entertaining fashion and a humorous fashion. So I think that's my job. I'm very lucky and very grateful that I get to do that in this book that I had no idea about. And then, as I said, I fell right into the middle of this controversy about whether or not George Washington's dentures, where those teeth came from. So yeah, I just hope it continues. I'm never ungrateful that I get to do what I do. I just think I'm very, very lucky.
Well, I am very lucky to have you on the show again. And you're right, your book, both the books have really portrayed not just the important history, but also I can hear your voice now when I read your books. And I enjoy it so much because there's like enough sarcasm to keep me reading, enough strangeness to make me want to okay, now I'm going to read the next chapter. I am someone who loves both the strange people side and the strange animal side. And for those folks, I would highly recommend your book. 10 out of 10. Definitely get a copy.
Thank you.
Tell people where they can find it and how they can keep in touch with what will inevitably be your next book.
The book goes on sale on August 13th. It can be pre-ordered, and it's available pretty much everywhere that books are sold in every format that's out there. So if you want to get a hold of me, you can contact me through my website. It's billschutt.com, or I'm also on Goodreads, author Bill Schutt. Same with Amazon. And I do respond if people have got questions or just want to chat or comment on my books. I'm always responding to folks and making a lot of friends like that. Yeah, I've got a proposal for a new nonfiction, but I'm not really ready to talk about that quite yet.
Okay, well, we'll stay in touch, and my listeners will stay in touch too, so that we can be in the loop when that does become public knowledge. So thank you again. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you very much, Meredith. It's always great talking to you.
Thanks for listening. If you liked this episode, you'll also like the one I did with the same guest about why cannibalism is taboo. It's episode 143. Stay tuned next week when I talk with a gender expert about the trad wife movement. Until then, keep it curious.